Hi, my name is Omar Cardoso. My partner is Leonardo Rules, and we're going to talk about the 18th Amendment. So, what is the 18th Amendment? The 18th Amendment banned the manufacture, transportation, and the sale of alcohol. We're moving to the background, and you will see that almost all the events, or most most of the events, will land in the progressive era. So there were two main factors, which are the market revolution, the westward expansion. And the westward expansion, an example would be the Northwest Ordinances and the Louisiana Purchase under Jefferson's presidency. And the westward expansion brought job opportunities for women and immigrants. So women were able to be independent from their families, and they gain their self-independency, and you will see a change of women's role throughout this time frame. And we see that the government inspired Americans, mostly farmers, to go west and populate the west and to seek their own fortunes. This government propaganda. So we see new immigrants coming to the U.S. The push factor for the Irish, which is the Irish potato famine and religious persecution, and the Germans were coming to the U.S. too. And the pull factor was they wanted to seek economic wealth, and for both immigrants, both groups of immigrants wanted to get a job opportunity provided by the industries that populated the West. So we see temperance movements and which is women's society. So women were against slavery and they support the idea of abolition. And an example would be the Uncle Thomas Cabin, inspiring the Northerners to rebel against the idea of slavery. And we see new women's organization created by women that help the poor people, the poor population, which were mostly immigrants and poor families in the suburbs. They children live in on streets, and they help them. Uh, this during this time, it was the Gilded Age mostly. They also help African Americans. They educate them, and the African Americans were mostly freed slaves who didn't know how to read or write. Uh, Also, women were punished by drunk husbands, and they were against that. So we see organized temperance movements that it was a movement against the consumption of alcohol. Um, so the temperance movements inspired other women to join the cause because they wanted to stop the idea of alcohol or the right of alcohol. And as you will see, women were getting more involved in politics, and in the future they will want more rights. So we see debates about whether alcohol should be banned, and you see the wet and the dry, which is one side or the other. The wet, where Germans or poor men pro alcohol came from. Germans came from a culture in which alcohol was very common. It was a temporary way to get out or forget about problems, a way to get fun. And the dries were against the social problems, which are the poverty, as I mentioned, the domestic violence, the crime, and the ill health, the moral turpitude. So we see anti-saloon league supporters, and they were very influential organizations. We see that Virginia was the first state to ban alcohol. Is that it shows how influential they were. The average man drank 88 bottles of whiskey a year, three times more than now. And the president who passed the 18th Amendment and the 19th Amendment was Wilson. So we see the case Hawk and V. Smith. challenged the validity of the 18th Amendment. It rose conflict between the people who supported the sale of alcohol and people against the sale of alcohol. So they wanted to drink, but they were unsuccessful. They showed that people were against the 18th Amendment, but they weren't able to drink again. So we see effects on society 1919. So it demonstrated how influential women were in politics during the 1920s. Women were able to get more rights, such as the right to vote. During the 19th Amendment was passed, it very influential in the society and in politics. Women were very influential mm, in the society and in politics, and they received more rights, such as the right to get divorced and the right to own property, and that changed the society completely. So we see no more drinking, illegal to drink. They were not able to drink again until the 22nd Amendment, and we see a rise of companies such as Coca-Cola. That it was something that replaced technically alcohol, mainly because it contained cocaine. So we see a creation of hidden places, illegal bars, secret bars against the 18th Amendment, smuggle alcohol, and this helped on the development of mafias. And we see the speakeasies of the sorry about that, the speakeasies of the 1920s. So effects on society today, we see law enforcement, more law enforcement. Police now are enforcing the laws. Uh, we see the legalization of alcohol. We see more organized crime, this smuggle of drugs, and the creation of the FBI to investigate criminal activities. And that's all, folks. Thank you. Have a nice day.